The 17th conference of the parties to the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, CITES COP17, kicks off in Johannesburg this weekend. Now, 182 nations will come together to tackle the world's biggest wildlife challenges and opportunities. The focus of the convention is not solely on the protection of species. It also promotes controlled trade that is not detrimental to the sustainability of wild species. It has become the best-known conservation convention in the world. Environmental Affairs Minister Edna Molewa joins us now from our Pretoria studios. Good afternoon, Minister, and thank you for your time on the SABC News Desk.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me, and thank you to your listeners.
Minister, a few days to go. Tell us why this conference is so hugely significant at this juncture.
We are hosting this conference as South Africa, and this being one of those events, large events that we are able to host, and also showcasing our own country firstly. Secondly, the amount of good conservation work that we are doing in the country. That's what's important, firstly, for us as a country. Secondly, the world is going to be meeting to decide on very important issues around the need for decision on curbing areas where there is actually utilization of our natural resources to an extent that they get depleted. So this CITES conference is a scientific conference that's based on science. In case, for instance, if a lion or elephants or those kinds of species that we expect matters to be discussed around are almost nearing extinction or are mainly depleted in some parts of the country or some parts of the world and not depleted in some other parts of the world, that issue needs to be discussed in order for us to find a balance as to how we ensure that we...
Yes, Minister, on the point of elephants, what is the regional position on the sale of ivory stock now, and will SADC or the regional bloc be pushing for approval, and how do you plan to structure your argument around that?
We have two countries that have proposed on the SADC region that have proposed that we be allowed or they be allowed to actually trade on ivory, and those are Namibia and Zimbabwe, for a simple reason that they have actually been exposed to a situation where there's an overpopulation of their elephants, just like we had them in South Africa a few years ago, some 17 or so years ago. When there's overpopulation, there's a need to actually use the natural conservation mechanism to actually manage those populations, and that's what they are actually asking. Whereas in some parts of the continent, the elephants are dwindling. In terms of numbers, they're going down on a continuous basis, but for a different reason. Probably also because of the management capacity there in those other areas. And those countries are saying, no, let's uplist to Appendix 1, ivory or even elephant trading. So these are the extreme ends of the proposal. So we are going to have to work around these proposals. Ours as a country, South Africa, is the support to the SADC countries, because we are in the same situation as they are. We know that they are managing their populations well, but we are also saying to those countries that are not quite winning at this present time, because they are brothers and sisters on the continent, we need to work with them and not say, yes, we are successful, they are not, but work with them to an extent that they can be able to be successful as well, instead of barring trade in the areas where it is actually supposed to be allowed, where the people have overpopulation.
Minister, CITES did approve that once-off sale of ivory stockpiles from South Africa, Namibia, Botswana and Zimbabwe back in 2008. Now, for argument's sake, if it does go ahead and grant us this approval, what measures, what assurances can you give us that there will be in place to ensure that the revenue generated from the sale of ivory will be used for elephant conservation and community development? What assurances can you give us that the money generated will actually reach the people that need it the most?
A very important question indeed, but let's walk a bit of a step back. We have had an opportunity as South Africa to trade on a once-off stockpile sale, And that sale, money accumulated there, was already paid back, and there was never a need to do any assurance. Indeed, it has gone back into conservation. This is the reason why we can actually confidently say, as the country, we have been pumping funds into conservation because of that income that we have realized. And it's not only the income that comes from there, but also government is pumping money into conservation function in order to ensure that we become this successful, a country, but also the region itself. So there is already a living example of what we can see with our own naked eyes, that money has actually been pumped into conservation already. So there's no need to over-convince or work on that kind of a modality. So yes, indeed, it will go back into those. But remember, this is actually a proposal not by South Africa that's been made now. It's a proposal by Zimbabwe and Namibia for this time around. Ours is, as South Africa, we need a decision-making mechanism on how we should be deciding as of a once-off sale, as per the decision that was taken when we had a moratorium put back then in two CITES meetings ago. So yes, we have gone through that route before. We do think that the two countries that have put this proposal will also similarly, like we have go through those motions. What is important is to put measures in place of permitting, in ensuring that the integrity of the system is in place. And that's really what matters for us now, but we are supporting that proposal.
Environmental Affairs Minister Edna Molewa joining us from our Pretoria studios.